Iguala, gracias por seguir estos contenidos, pero te agradezco si le das suscribirte y a la manito, y si además quiere comentar, mucho mejor.
Good evening. Today is August the 8th. This is 8:53 p.m. and this is Sincericidio number 8 with my friend Mr. Abel Carvajal, who is in Miami. And we're going to continue with this chats and try to give our audience another perspective of how are things going on, but in English, because we know that there's a lot of Hispanic Americans that live in the US, but their children barely speak Spanish, and we want their parents to show them the content of our chats. So that's why we're trying to do this in English. So welcome, Abel. How's it going for you this week?
Welcome. Thank you so much for your invitation. It's been great. I got to tell you, the heat down up here is nuts. I don't know how it's down there like in Venezuela, but over here it's scorching, intense heat. But thankfully, I've spent most of the last week indoors. So I'm not getting hit by the sun too much, but it's been a lot following the news. Now that I've been indoors so much, I get to watch all the TV and keep track on all the news, and we have a lot to talk about today.
Well, down here is hot as usual. These days is rainy season, so it's like 32 degrees Celsius, and the humidity is like 94%. Jeez. But it's hot as usual. Nothing new.
Yeah. Well, it's summer year-round over here. That's what you get when you have the Caribbean experience.
Oh, yes. So, I wanted to start because the good things and the bad news for some people is that the special attorney, Mr. Smith.
He's very special.
Yeah, he got caught red-handed because he didn't give all the evidence to the defense of Mr. Trump, and he lied in the court in written. So you have to see a short made by the Epoch Times where they show where Mr. Smith's office, they recognized to the court that they didn't give all the evidence for Mr. Trump's defense. So that's why many people are saying that they want to ask for a mistrial because they're cheating according to the rules. So that's one thing. The other one is that the judge is getting very hammered because she's giving a lot of money to the Democrats. She's an Obama appointee, but more than that is that there's not a safe venue to get a fair trial in her district. So they're asking to move the trial to West Virginia. So we'll see how it goes. But since Mr. Smith got caught red-handed, tricking the defense, that might be something very fancy to get hammered with, I think.
Well, when we talk about the venue, I'll touch on your point about the venue. This is very tough to find a jury of people because, number one, everybody in America has heard about Donald Trump. Number two, everyone in America has an opinion about Donald Trump. So finding a panel of jurors that is going to be unbiased, that's going to be really tough wherever you go. The trial in DC is a place where Trump had 95% of the people vote against him. So it's going to be very difficult to find people that agree with him. And how do you impanel a jury that's going to support him versus oppose him, and that they're going to reach a verdict on the grounds that they don't like him politically or they like him politically? And that's a problem, right? Every person's entitled to equal justice under the law and to due process, and that means having an impartial jury. And getting one of those would be very difficult. And West Virginia would be to the president's advantage because West Virginia is a very conservative state. So it would be very difficult for him not to find at least one juror that would not vote to impeach him no matter what, and to convict him no matter what. And that would be, the tough logistic for the prosecutors, because if one juror holds out, he walks. It's a mistrial. He doesn't go in. He doesn't go to jail. So you have to make sure that everybody on the panel, if you're the prosecutor, dislikes him, or if you're the defense, if you just get one that will like Trump. Obviously, one of the things that they'll screen for when they screen jurors is political bias. And I don't want a biased jury. I want an impartial jury. This is an important case. I want a jury that's going to come to a determination based off the evidence and the law. But getting that's going to be very difficult.
Well, but the other thing is that the media is being harsh about the thing that Mr. Smith kept evidence. Nobody has said that. Only some journalists on the web that are disclosing this, but in the mainstream media, they haven't said that Mr. Smith lied and kept evidence from the defense.
Right.
So that's something really terrible. The other thing is that they're planning to go ahead with the fourth trial in Georgia, and what the representative from Florida, Mr. Donaldson, is saying is that they want to dry Trump of his money to do campaign just to pay for legal fees.
Yeah,
that's what they're trying to do. They just want to cut the elephant in 1,000 pieces with a razor blade very slowly, so he cannot defend himself. And that's part of the idea. And that's why there are many people complaining that the Republicans in the House and in the Senate, they should go with impeachment against the Hunter, because they're giving him a free pass instead of going rough against that old far corrupted guy, I think.
Right. Well, one of the difficulties with investigations, and if we were to impeach Biden over the situation of Hunter, over the scandals, is, and we covered this in the last program, is one of the problems that you have when you're out of power is that you don't have control over the Department of Justice. So it could be a scenario where Congress subpoenas Biden or subpoenas Hunter, and they don't want to come. And Congress can vote to, it's called to hold in contempt of Congress. And Congress could vote to hold in contempt anyone, Hunter, the Attorney General, whoever it is that they decide. The issue is that the Department of Justice would have to prosecute that. So Congress cannot file what's known as a bill of attainder, which means Congress cannot pass a law to prosecute someone individually. So yes, we can have an impeachment proceeding. We can have an impeachment vote, which would probably pass, and it would go to the Senate where it would fail, but more likely than not. So, but we can go through that process. But then the problem is that to get the evidence, they could just not turn it over. And that's what happens with Trump when he was in power, is that the Democrats can threaten all they want, but the Department of Justice is not going to vote in contempt, is not going to follow up on a Congress contempt motion against their own president, against their own boss.
Yeah, like it happened with Eric Holder.
What's interesting, though, that was the case with Eric Holder. What's interesting, though, is if Trump comes back and wins, and he has a very good chance of coming back to win, he is going to be the nominee. There's very little question of that as of now. The debate's in a couple of weeks. I don't know if he's going to debate or not. He said contradictory things. He said he was going to debate. He said he was not going to debate. But even with debates, it doesn't seem to me that anybody can catch up to Trump between now and the next 6-7 months.
Yeah.
So he's going to be the nominee. And if he gets back in the White House, which he has a pretty good chance, I saw polls today out of Arizona showing him ahead. There's the very distinct possibility that he ends up presiding over a Department of Justice that is seeking to put him in jail. So he could theoretically just fire the prosecutors and have the Department of Justice close the case or pardon himself. Although that's not so clear. But that's a very real possibility that he could just shut down the investigation if he gets back in the White House. So the federal cases would close. The one in Florida and the one in DC would close down if the trial wasn't by the time of the election. And with the case in Georgia, I mean, and the case in New York is very minimal. I mean, yes, it's 34 counts, but it's not particularly. It's not 34 counts of murder. It's 34 counts of falsifying business records, and it was an overcharge. It's the weakest case against him. And the case in Georgia, I mean, Georgia has a Republican governor. I know Brian Kemp and the president have been at odds with one another, but the simplest path to ending this whole thing could just be Kemp stepping in and pardoning him. So Trump could walk away out of this as president and completely untouched. That's a very real possibility.
Well, the only good thing that I've heard about the case in Washington is that now he has the chance to prove his case about the fraud. And he can get all the information that hasn't been provided to him, because now, since he's the defendant, he gets the power to suggest and request all the proofs that is there against him, and he can challenge that. And that will be a great political case. And that's why now they're trying to put a gag order in him, so he not to speak about this corrupted the DA. So the thing is, the DA can cheat, but me as a defendant, I cannot bitch about you. So that's something that is not fair enough. So
yeah. So my thoughts on how Trump should approach this is he should let his lawyers carry out his legal defense. At the end of the day, his counsel, his lawyers have to present reasonable doubt in court against what they're charging, the prosecution's asserting. All they have to do is present reasonable doubt on the charges. He can make the political case. I wouldn't recommend it. I think his focus needs to be making sure that he at least puts reasonable doubt. His primary thing's got to be walking away and making sure that he's not held guilty here, because that could seriously impede his campaign. He's got to make sure his energy's got to be focused on securing an acquittal. Yes, he can present the cases, whatever evidence he can find to defend his claim. He can certainly present that, but his focus has to be deflecting against the charges that are brought up against him. That's got to be his priority, and the priority of his lawyers. He's got to walk away from this. Number one, that's got to be his number one objective. And I get it, right? You might be tempted to present your case and prove that what you were saying was right and that you were vindicated. That could very well be a strategy of his, but his defense has to be putting reasonable doubt onto the prosecution's case, and that's best left to his attorneys. The other problem is that, as this is a federal court case in both Florida and in DC, cameras are not allowed into federal courts, so we will not get to see this trial play out. Like in 2021, we had the Rittenhouse trial and we had the Derek Chauvin trial, and both of those were televised and both of those were covered by the media at length. The trial this one's not going to be like that. There's not going to be an active camera feed, just because that has to do with the federal judicial code, and that's long-standing.
Well, as long as they don't have Mr. Schiff leaking everything, because the thing is that it's been proved that the rules only play to Mr. Trump, but for the Democrats, they can do whatever they want. That's one thing. The other one that I think is interesting is that he had a rally today in New Hampshire.
Mhm.
And in the last times, in the last meetings with public, he's not spending too much time in this corrupt old fart, but he's going on the economy. That is what really counts. And
Good.
that's what I think he's on the message. Because and basically the other guys in the primaries and in the Democrat side is that they're losing time on character, but they're not defining the solution for the economy. And that's where he's pounding now. And I think that's why he's about 58% in the Republicans and about 45 in the general election, because what really counts for the American people is the money, is the gas. And I read something that the gas prices are very close into $4. And when Mr. Trump got left office, we're like 189. So there you have an issue, and that's where they have to hammer. And the other thing is that, well, I think I saw Mr. Kudlow in an interview like 2 days ago, and he said that the problem is the message, and the guy is on the right message, that it's the economy. Stupid.
The economy, stupid. What's interesting about New Hampshire is that in New Hampshire, Trump's supposed nearest rival, DeSantis, is falling into third place, or in danger of falling into third place behind Chris Christie. That's a very real possibility. No, Trump's polling either in the high 50s or in the high 40s, somewhere in between that. Seeing how there's 7 or 8 candidates in the field, there's no way that he will not be the nominee at the present moment. And DeSantis's campaign is imploding at the seams. They actually fired the campaign manager today.
Yeah, I read that. Well,
so it's a campaign in complete chaos.
So the other issue I wanted to talk to you about today is what is happening down south here in Colombia with Petro's son, that the guy blew the whistle. And basically he said, I'm not taking 30 years for my dad, basically because he always denies me and says that he didn't raise me. So if I've done hurt, if you don't hurt for me, then screw you, mister. And the guy went and said everything. Basically, he's saying that he got the money from the drug dealers, but his dad was running the show. So that's the nice information down here.
What is it with the sons of presidents in this hemisphere and drugs and corruption? It's a recurring theme.
Well, it happened in Argentina. You see the son of the Kirchners are a whole bunch of plutocrats and thieves and thugs. And then you have the same thing with Lula's son. And then you have the same thing with Chavez's sons and daughters. And then you have the same things with the Maduro's son, who is a stupid idiot, and his wife, the nephews. And then you have the problem in Colombia. And then you have the problem in Mexico with this drunk guy that his son is the same thing. And then you have the problem in Guatemala with the president, I think his son. So the thing is that there's not a big enforcement of the law, and the presidential families are allowed to get into the business. And basically the big issue is 2 things. First, they like a lot of pot or cocaine. And the second one, they don't pay good advisors in order to get like 100 shell companies like Mr. Biden does. So the money hasn't been found. So those are the 2 issues.
Our criminals are smarter than their criminals. No. You also, speaking of family problems, you have Trudeau. I don't know if you've heard about the news that his wife and him are now split. So another family.
That's another communist jerk, globalist. He's got hammer, so he deserves it. And the thing is, Macron in France, well, he doesn't have the problem with the sun. He has a problem with the guy who lives in an apartment right by the Elysium Palace, where a funny guy lives there, and everybody asks, "Who's this guy? Who's this guy?" And then they found that that's not the son, but that's the sugar daddy, something like that. So that's the way things are going on so far. So basically, what is happening is that the conservative movement is moving forward. That's why you see the changes in Sweden, the changes in Holland, the changes that is going to be in France soon enough with Mrs. Le Pen, and the changes in Germany where the AfD is going up, and basically the problem in Spain. They still haven't solved the problem, but I think Sanchez is trying to do a Hail Mary because he lost one representative, one deputy. But the thing is that it affected the whole game.
Yes.
Because now they have to get the vote from the Catalonian right-wing guy, not the absence. And that's where he got hammered. So now Spain doesn't have it clear. So the only two options are either Núñez Feijóo takes the shot and tries to get, in possession, especially when Vox got out and said, we will give the votes for free. We're not going to the government. That was one thing. And the other one is go to elections in December. So, but still, it means that the conservatives won. So that's the way it's going on so far.
Right. Well, no, the right did win the elections in Spain. Let's be really, they won the most votes. They won more votes than the left. The only thing keeping the right out of power is a system of proportional representation that overinflates the power of the separatists in Catalonia and the Basque Country. The PNV, which has governed with the Partido Popular in the past, the Basque nationalists, but they're not calling for separatism of the Basque Country. They want more autonomy, essentially. The PNV has governed with the conservatives. They don't want to this time. But the thing is, the system in Spain is messed up because if you want to get rid of the prime minister with a vote of no confidence, you have to bring in another government. Whereas in Canada or in the UK, if they want to do a motion of no confidence, you go to another election. And that would be that they should fix that in Spain, because if you can call another election, if Vox decides that they don't want to support the government anymore and they want to go into another election, they wouldn't have to risk Pedro Sanchez coming in and becoming prime minister. Or if Podemos wants to, or whatever they're called now, wants to call an election and they don't want to support a socialist government because they're rising in the polls, they could withdraw support without the conservatives coming into power. I think that's a better alternative. Spain's system of positive parliamentarianism is problematic because it leads to these impasses. There's got to be a scenario in which the king says, you won the most votes, you won the most seats, you're prime minister unless there's a vote of no confidence against you. And that's how it is in Canada. That's how it is in the UK. And it's worked. I mean, you don't have repeat elections in those countries. You don't have elections being held every 6 months like Spain does. Something needs to be changed in Spain's system. I understand, that the founders of Spain's democracy and Spain's constitutional order didn't think that the system would break this way, but it has. And they've really got to look towards the UK or Canada as examples because their systems work. I mean, yes, they're flawed, but they don't have repeat elections. They don't have the risk of withdrawing support in exchange for the other side getting in. You go to an election, and that's how it should be. But I think there's going to be other elections in December. There's no way that either faction is going to form a government. And the problem is that the next elections is probably going to result in the same thing, another deadlock. That's the direction that I think Spain is heading in again.
But there's a kicker that Podemos is being disintegrated because they didn't save money. They didn't get money from the affiliates. They were only confident on, how do you call that? On entitlements. Now they lost the entitlements and they kicking everybody out for unemployment. So they're wasted. First thing. Second thing is that Sumar, that is a whole bunch of, it's a nest of rats, is also imploding. So if they go for a repetition, probably the socialists got the unified thing, but the other communist forces are getting hammered, and that's a good thing. But the other place where I want your comments is that Argentina has an election in these days, and the conservative movement has a good chance with Mr. Milei. He closed the campaign yesterday at the Movistar Arena, and that thing was full. It was like Soda Stereo concert. It was full. It was great, and the guy is on message. And I think they have a great chance in Argentina to get rid of this whole bunch of crooks. And the good thing is that Milei doesn't have sons. He has 4 dogs. So probably he doesn't get close to the problems that the Kirchners and the Lulas and all those craps have. And that's the good thing, I think.
No, so I'm looking at polls, and I mean, the polls have been all over the place, but it's very clear to me that at the very least, the Kirchnerites are out of power. There's no way that the Kirchner folks are going to return to power after this election, which is a positive. It's a win for Argentina. Who exactly takes over after the Kirchnerites are out is unclear. Milei is a strong candidate. He's a conservative candidate, and he's somebody that people have never heard of before. He's a brand new figure, and he's taken the country by storm. He's a political newcomer. And in his first run, he's polling 20-30%. So that's very impressive. And if I'm not mistaken,
it's about the economy.
And he's an economist.
Yeah, but his main goal is the economy. So yeah, he's right on target. He's right on the money.
It's the economy, silly.
Yeah. So the thing is, for all our friends that are in Argentina, just make sure you vote for La Libertad Avanza, because it's the best chance Argentina has, because the other candidates are part of the same last thing for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same excrement, different flies, basically. So, and then we come down to here in my country, here in Venezuela. We have the primaries are going to be in October. Mrs. Machado has a great chance, but there are 2 things that I think might hurt. Is that the government doesn't want the primaries, because if she wins the vote, she will be the contender for 1.5 years. So she will be the person to go to when you want an opinion about the opposition. Instead of now that you have like 13 or 20 free thinkers, you know, making drawings on the wall or whatever. But since it will go to her, that will be a very big challenge. So they're coming with this macho crap, trying to offend her, trying to get hoodlums to, you know, kick her or whatever. But we'll see. But one of the problems we're having is on message. The problem in Venezuela is that all the candidates and Mrs. Machado, they are, you know, trying to improve the country, but they're not saying how to get jobs, how to fix the economy, how to lesser taxes, how to privatize more than 1,000 things that are in the hand of the government now. And I think that's the issue. and they're not talking about the economy. Oh, we want to be great. We want to be a great country. That's crap. All people care is that they have money in the pocket to buy food, groceries, or to buy beers on Fridays. And I think that's the big problem in Latin America, that we're going too much on the the political crap, but we're not going in the real problems, that is jobs, taxes, and privatizations, and the rule of law. And that's one of the other problems we have.
So my question to you, since you're in the country, is how likely is it that the opposition can win an election, given that the PSUV has done a great job over the last 20 years, and it's not good what they've done, but they've been good at what they do, and that is rigging elections. How do you make sure that whoever wins the most votes becomes the president?
Well, in my case, I'm not going to vote because I know the system is rigged. I know it's been handled by Smartmatic and Dominion, and the government, the Chavistas, are the owners of the software and the systems and the machines and the register, the vote register. So that's why I don't believe in that. The only thing that I think that could be a good thing for her is win the primaries, because that's hand votes. That's not on the Chavista system. And then after that, she has to make her case and become the leader of Venezuela, not the candidate. Because I'm sure that if she just stands there as the candidate, she will be spoiled. I mean, they will rob her. These Chavistas, they robbed the election in Spain with Indra. They robbed it in Colombia with Indra. They robbed it in when Macri went against Fernandez in Argentina. That was part of it. They robbed Bolsonaro with Lula in Brazil. And they robbed, they're in your country, they robbed the Orange Man. So if that happened, I don't think we're able to win. But the thing is, we need a leader that can make the case and, see how it develops, or if we go to an anarchy or whatever else. But at least you have to count the ballots by hand in order to get the leader. And that's why the government is trying to, blow away the primaries. Because
I've seen a couple of polls.
They have a win. What?
I've seen a couple of polls that show her in the lead, and by double digits.
Oh yes, definitely.
If what she could do is what Tsikhanouskaya did in Belarus, and that is called the Smart Vote Initiative, where people take a picture of their ballot or how they casted their vote and send it to a centralized database, so you can keep track of how many people voted for you. And you could say, I won 6 million votes, 7 million votes. I should be president. And that's one strategy she can do when she appeals to the international community and says, I'm the legitimate president of Venezuela.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you go to vote, they don't let you get in with the phones. It has happened to me. I have tried to get a picture of my vote, and man, that's like, it's easier to call Ethan Hunt than to get the damn picture of the vote and try to do that. Because I tell you, this is contact sports, but with steel spikes. That's the way it is. So that's why I say we need a leader. We need a compelling case. We need her to talk about the real issues that are the rule of law, how to get jobs, how to, get things going on and respect the partners, and trying to do a lot of privatizations, and then you can make a case later on. But for now, since the Democrats are in power there in your country, we don't have a chance. That's for real.
For the time being. When are the elections? When is the general election in Venezuela?
The general election is supposed to be in December of 2024, but there's a saying out in the streets that the government wants to get it ahead by April of 2024 because they don't want to be so close to the election in the US.
Yes.
So they have to have the problem solved before the election of November of 2024. But we will see how that goes.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I wish you the best of luck in your country.
Thanks a lot, my friend. Well, Abel, I'll give you a minute to say goodbye because time is running out.
Yes. So no, I mean, my $5 issue of the day is just the strength of conservatism all over the world. You know, you're looking at in countries across the world, in Argentina, as we mentioned, Chile, Spain, France, Germany. The right is ascendant. The right is moving up. Italy. Oh, Italy already happened. But the right is on an upward trajectory. Canada is another example. On an upward trajectory, it looks like the current stem of left-wing leaders in this hemisphere in particular, but also in Europe, is going in another way. And the other thing to watch for this week is Niger. There was a coup that took place in that country, and essentially the Wagner Group is involved. It's a big deal in West Africa, and there could very well be a big war starting over there in the next couple of weeks. So it's something that we should keep on our radar, the situation in Niger, because it's a significant country. Nigeria is home to 230 million people. It's a big petrol state, and it's something that we got to keep our eyes on because they can get involved in this situation right now.
Yeah. Nigeria is saying that they don't accept the way it's going on in Niger. And
Niger, big difference.
Yeah, it's a difference. And they say, we're not going to take this and we're not going to let Vladimir Putin get here because he can be worse than the French. And that's the real kicker.
No, and then the problem is the Wagner Group could also spill into Nigeria. And Nigeria has their issues along the border in that region because they have Boko Haram, which is an Islamist group. So that's a threat to the security of the state. And Boko Haram has killed thousands of Nigerians. It's a very serious thing. And Nigeria is a big player in African politics. And it could very well be an emerging power.
I have to let you go because the time is running out. See you, my friend, next week. Bye-bye. I hope everybody likes this and put a finger and go follow on the
Bollito de corazón a 2.500 el paquete, hallacas de pollo a 2.500 cada una. A la orden los bollitos de mazorca a 2.500 el paquete, bollito de corazón.